I am so sorry for what I'm about to do to your TBRs. We are being overrun by new books. It's kind of a happy catastrophe. I don't know what we're going to do. There's clearly not enough hours in a day to read all of these cool new October releases in a timely manner. All 30 of them. That's right.
Oh, hell no.
So welcome everyone to your monthly dose of new book releases. Rip to all of your reading plans. Just put all the blame on me. There's something here for everyone, enough to keep you occupied for the rest of the year probably. So let's not waste time and dive right in because it's going to be a long one and I'm going to be pretty rapid fire, so get ready. The amount of books coming out on October 3rd, my goodness, that is such a busy publishing day, but we do have one book that sounds amazing coming out on October 2nd, and that is The Burning Bandit. By the way, all of these books are going to be linked in the description box for you if you're interested. Now, this is a YA fantasy that is reminding me a lot of Avatar because the magic system involves the 4 elements. It's following 2 boys, Kai and Ryan, who live very different lives. Kai's family was brutally attacked by the military and is taken to the capital city as a prisoner of war. And then Ryan is part of a powerful family here, and they become friends, and I'm going to assume help one each other out. So we have themes of friendship, politics, survival. It sounds really great, and I'm absolutely sold by this cover. All right, October 3rd, The Scarlet Alchemist. A YA fantasy about a girl who dreams of being a royal alchemist, but in order to survive and keep food on the table, she practices an illegal form of alchemy, which is necromancy pretty much. At least that's what it sounds like, raising people from the dead. Word gets out and someone approaches her from the court and asks for help. So we have court politics, a rebellion of sorts, a darker element because of the mention of necromancy. Honestly, a great fantasy for spooky season possibly, so get on this one. After the Woods, if you are into fairy tales, this one is for you. This takes place 15 years after the events of the gingerbread house story, and Greta has gotten a hold of the witch's grimoire, which helps her make her magical gingerbread, and the village is full of superstition, as they should be, as dark magic is returning to the woods. Could that mean the witch is back? Probably. This sounds really cozy to me, like cozy cottagecore fairy tale for the month of October, on the darker side obviously, and honestly just talking about gingerbread is getting me hyped and hungry. I hope there's a lot of food description in this. Knock Knock Open Wide, the first full-fledged horror book on our list today, and what's cool about this one is it's mixing with Celtic mythology. One night while driving home in the Irish countryside, our main character, Etten, finds a maybe dead body on the road, and she brings the body to a remote farmhouse and thus begins unspeakable horror that takes her on the brink of insanity, as she's suddenly marked as missing and won't speak of anything about what happened. If you're looking for some creepy Irish folklore, this sounds like it might quench your craving. The Jinbot Shantyport, a brand new sci-fi that is being promoted as Aladdin meets Murderbot. That sounds fantastic. I'm going to assume the Murderbot version in this story is the little robot monkey on the cover. At least I freaking hope so. And it takes place in a dystopian high surveillance city, and we follow some characters who are fighting back. I've heard this takes more of a funny, delightful route, which is right up my alley. It sounds like a nice, unique change to your like serious, complex sci-fi. Meanwood? Miniwood? Dude, the struggle bus is real. I don't know how to pronounce this title. This is the sequel to Hild though, and as you can definitely get an idea from this beautiful cover that this is a historical series. A great fall genre, which is why I wanted to mention it here. This takes readers back to the 7th century Britain as it covers a few years in Hild's life, a big time of change and upheaval for both her and Britain, and Hild must survive great losses and setbacks and emerge wiser and more experienced. If you want a coming of age, rich and raw historical setting, the series gets highly praised for that. The Hurricane Wars, this is getting so much hype. It's a sci-fi fantasy mix. Think Star Wars meets the Grishaverse, I guess. It's supposed to be a Raylo fanfic, but make it like Southeast Asian as well. There's a lot of stuff thrown in there. I know it's confusing. We have 2 characters who are on opposing sides of the war with opposing magical abilities. One wields light magic and the other shadow magic. So you guessed it, we do have a enemies to lovers romance. There's warring nations. This is a debut, I believe, in the new adult genre, so so not fully YA and not fully adult. Let me know if you've read this one or if you plan to, because the hype is quite ramped up for it. Night of the Witch. Let's be real, if you're looking for a witchy read for the month, you got one right here. This is written by two very well-known authors, Sarah Rosh and Beth Revis. It's a fantasy take on the witch trials in Germany, and we follow Fritzi, who survived an attack on her coven by witch hunters. And we also follow Otto, who is the leader of the witch hunters, and the two of them end up working together to fight a common enemy because she's been hearing voices in her head. So who knows if they're good voices or bad voices, but she needs help. The Dead Take the A Train. Don't even get me started on this awesome cover. It's one of my favorites of the month. This is an urban cosmic horror fantasy mix about a burnt out 30-something-year-old me. It's set in New York, and our main character exorcises demons. This is actually one of the authors who wrote The Salt Grows Heavy and Nothing But Blackened Teeth, so we can kind of expect some weird spooky things. A Haunting on the Hill. Just by like the very familiar title alone, you can get an idea on what this book is about, but what's really cool is this is the first ever novel authorized to return to the world of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, and I just feel obligated to read it as the main character's name is Holly. I don't see that often, and she's a screenwriter, so what does she do? She takes a leap of faith and rents a abandoned manor for her up-and-coming play. She has some friends with her, and everything seems to be going well until, you know, the paranormal shit happens. I'm actually not a fan of The Haunting of Hill House, but I do really want to give this new edition a chance. Shield Maiden. This is a feminist retelling of Beowulf. How cool is that? Our main character has always wanted to be a shield maiden, but a horrific accident has left her with a disability, which means shield maiden probably not going to happen. But things take a turn when, during a gathering of different clans, she has to help defend her village. And I guess this includes like some cursed dragon. And you guessed it, that's the part that sold me. I love me a good sounding Viking historical fantasy, so definitely look out for this one next month. It's kind of reminding me of Sky in the Deep a little bit. The Night House. First off, props to this awesome cover. The imagery on it is freaking amazing. It's giving me like classic horror story. We follow a 14-year-old boy named Richard who is sent to live with other relatives in a new town after his parents died, and here is where his classmate Tom goes missing, and he was apparently eaten by a telephone. Weird. It is separated into 3 parts, so we get to see Richard at various points in his life as he tries to unravel this mystery that he is now evidently a part of. A perfect book for spooky season, and again, this cover wins it for me. It looks like a movie poster. And then we have Downpour. This is another cover that I love. This is a horror slash psychological thriller. We have our main character who not only has to deal with this crazy storm where everything that the storm touches becomes corrupted, whatever the hell that means, but also some family trauma he's dealt with his whole life. I really like the symbolism of the title so far. So if you're someone who loves storms, like climate horror, is that a thing? Climate horror? Maybe. Then put this on your TBR. Finally, moving on to a new date, October 10th, we have Curious Tides. This is a dark academia fantasy. The story revolves around a teenage mage who embarks on a quest to uncover the truth behind a weird society that may be linked to the untimely demise of her fellow classmates. So that is very much reminding me of Babel a little bit, or even A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. But reviewers have said this one is very unique and lush, magical. So if you want a new dark academia, look no further. Hatchet Girls. So this is a thriller that is based off of the Lizzie Borden mystery. If you don't know what that is, it was a case back in the 1800s where Lizzie was arrested for the axe murder of her father and stepmother, but was found not guilty because no way a woman could do that. There's many movies about it, and well, here's a story inspired by it, but with a supernatural twist. I believe this is YA, so it can't be that gruesome, right? Who knows? I don't know. I'm sure this will catch someone's eye, so I wanted to mention it. And then we have The Night Hunt, the author who wrote To Kill a Kingdom and a few other books as well, but the most notable one I feel like is To Kill a Kingdom. She's back with another YA fantasy that's on the darker side. We follow two characters, Atia and Silas. Atia is a monster who feeds on people's fear, and Silas ferries the dead into the afterlife, so very Karen from Greek mythology. Well, Atia breaks a law and now the gods are sent out to hunt her. This is a standalone book, so you don't have to worry about a cliffhanger. It should be wrapped up nicely. And also, just what a beautiful cover. Speaking of covers, Brainworms. Can we talk about it for a second? I can't decide if I absolutely love it or hate it with a burning passion. This is a queer horror that involves a parasite that is plaguing the LGBTQ+ community. It's being labeled as extreme horror. It's supposed to be totally disgusting and not for the faint of heart. I mean, the cover kind of gives us all the warnings. Red River 7. So I had no idea this was written by highly acclaimed fantasy author Anthony Ryan, which makes this all the more interesting. This is a dystopian thriller that begins with 7 people at sea just drifting in a boat, and they all have no recollection on who they are or how they even got there, and then they discover a dead body on board with an apparent gunshot. This sounds like an addicting thriller. I am absolutely interested in this one, even more so because of the author behind it. The Bone Roots, a brand new Slavic fantasy, is landing next month surrounding 2 mothers who will do anything to protect their daughters. One mother has magical abilities and is trying to keep her daughter from, I guess, being taken by the forest, whatever that means, and the other who is grieving the loss of her daughter after she went missing. And I'm going to assume they journey together to help one another, possibly. Whatever the case, it sounds emotional, maybe some found family there. The cover is gorgeous. Bittersweet and the Hollow. This is a small town creepy thriller with folklore sprinkled throughout it, specifically the Mothman. I actually have the physical copy of this, and when I read the back of it, it sounded like the perfect fall read. It sounds almost Southern Gothic, though the cover doesn't like give that. We have a generational family of witches, and one of them goes into the forest, gets lost, but when she comes out, she has no memory of what happened, and she starts to have nightmares. Creepy forest, witchy, absolutely filled with spooky season vibes. Okay, we're moving on to October 17th. We have All That Consumes Us. I'm repeating myself again, but I love this cover so much. This is another possibly dark academia story. We have Tara, a college student who gets accepted into a very elite academic society that I believe takes place in a Victorian mansion, so that's cool. And it's believed by outsiders to be a satanic cult. A little while after, she begins having weird dreams, and when she wakes, she finds that she's written stories she doesn't remember writing. It's like very modern, spooky gothic, and I like it. Catfish Rolling. I believe this one is already out in the UK already. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is coming out in the US next month. And the premise of this one is there's a catfish underneath the islands of Japan, and when it rolls, it causes earthquakes. And we follow a young girl whose mother was lost after a recent earthquake, and she lives with her dad, who is a scientist studying the earthquakes. And Sora might be the key in helping, as she is more sensitive to the shifts that happen. This sounds so interesting, nothing like I've ever read before. It definitely sounds like magical realism. These Burning Stars. So I have read this one. This is a very complex sci-fi following a couple characters, actually. First we follow a cleric, and then we transition to following June and maybe someone else who gets their hands on a secret that could destroy everything. I really don't want to spoil too much about this one. This is one you have to go in not knowing much. This is a huge world to get lost in. Again, very complex, very hands-on. So if you've been waiting for a very detailed sci-fi with a fast-paced story, you got one here. Under the Smoke-Strewn Sky. So this is the 4th and maybe final book. I think it's the conclusion in the Up and Under series. Clearly well into the series, so I can't talk about it much here, except it continues from where the last book stopped and follows Avery and Zib on the last leg of their journey. I'm keeping this one short. Two Twisted Crowns, the highly anticipated sequel to One Dark Window. A lot of people loved the first book, and good news, this one is getting a lot of good reviews so far, and that it doesn't suffer from second book syndrome, so that's great. This is a dark adult fantasy, as it's published by Orbit Books, though it can be enjoyed by people who read YA. In book 1, our characters are searching for what are known as the Providence cards, basically the magic system in this universe, and we immediately follow that journey into this sequel. I can't say more, but I hope this lives up to your anticipated hype. The Unmaking of June Farrow, the latest book by Adrienne Young, a new YA fantasy, though it sounds more like a mystery thriller to me, maybe more toward magical realism again. So in this book, we follow June, the most recent of the pharaoh women, and every generation there is this curse that follows them. But June is determined to break it because it has plagued her family. She sees things that aren't there, like this random door that she's never gone through. But what happens if she does go through it? Right there is definitely the hook. This has been getting many stars across the board, and it has me really interested. Alrighty, the only book I have here that's coming out on the 19th is A Little Luck. This is book 2 in the Arrowmount series, a series of books that you can read in any way you like, though I recommend reading book 1, A Second Story, because I loved it. These are very cozy and warm fantasies that just put you in a good mood. They're not too long either. This is a sapphic romance following an artifact hunter and the town bard who get thrown together to organize the upcoming festival in Arrowmount. If you're looking for like a slice of life kind of genre, I highly recommend these. Moving along to the 24th, we have Traitor of Redwinter, one of my most anticipated sequels of the year. The first book is Daughter of Redwinter. It surprised me so much. I love the magic system that involved opening like gates of power inside yourself. Obviously, I can't talk about much here, but it does have a cool magical school setting. Ancient magic, demons. I've already heard this one is even more fleshed out and opens up the plot in a very interesting direction, so I am super pumped about it. And on October 31st, we have What the River Knows. Listen, you compare anything to The Mummy, I'm going to read it. So I guess, spoiler alert for my October TBR, because this is going to be on it if I haven't picked it up yet. So yeah, The Mummy meets Death on the Nile. Ancient Egypt absolutely fascinates me. It makes sense as someone who loves cats. The main characters here are looking for Cleopatra's tomb, and that just sounds so fun and interesting, especially in the genre of magical realism, as the character discover old magic that Cleopatra herself casted. So freaking cool. I cannot wait to read this one. And then we have Nestlings. This is an urban horror story set in New York City. It's supposed to be Rosemary's Baby meets Salem's Lot. So you already know it's going to be dark and creepy. We have a couple who moved to this older building that has been renovated. They also have a baby named Charlie. And since Charlie's birth, the mother has become paralyzed from her waist down. Shortly after moving in, things begin to change. Like weird sounds coming from the baby monitor. That's creepy. It sounds super good and a perfect spooky read for October. And finally, a season of monstrous conceptions. This is a novella that I guess is like a Victorian sapphic cosmic horror. It has a lot going on for it, but it sounds really cool. Even the blurb mentions it's like an eldritch historical fantasy of midwifery and monstrosity taking place in London in the late 1600s. It follows Sarah Davis, an apprentice midwife who arrives in London just as distinctly inhuman babies start to be born. Some with many eyes and others with fins, webbed fingers, fur, horns, you name it. Very like Frankenstein-esque. And I love it. Congratulations, you have reached the end of this video and I need to take a break and a nap. I hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me down below which book that you're most interested in. I know there are so many to choose from. Are there any that are on your immediate TBR that you need to read as soon as it releases? Because I would love to know. And also tell me down below any that I missed, because I know there's a ton of books coming out in October. Like this video if you liked, it really helps me out. Subscribe if you are not. I'd love to have you here. And until we meet again, happy reading.